Okay. Now the reason why we watch the abdomen during vipassana instead of the nostrils. Well, first of all, anapanasati doesn't require that you look at the nostrils. Anyone who insists that anapanasati is focusing on the nostrils is really being incredibly dogmatic, because there's no reason why the nostril is any more appropriate as a meditation object than the stomach. This is one thing. Now the the qualifier here is that it seems to be that the Buddha was suggesting that we focus on the nostril, the parimukkhang. Parimukkhang means around the mouth. Some people have said, no, parimukkhang means to the front. Parimukkhang satting upadapetva. He sets up mindfulness either around the mouth, parimukkhang, or at the front. Puts mindfulness as the front, because parimukha, mukha means front, or here the door. It has many meanings, but parimukha, well, we don't know exactly what this word means. It's not used very often in the Tipitaka. But sure, it could very well mean that the Buddha said focus on the area around the mouth, the front of the face. And by extension, people think it means the nose. It actually obviously doesn't mean the nose. So to say the Buddha taught the nostrils is actually incorrect. He said focus around the mouth. He may have said, or he may have just said put mindfulness to the front, which many people translate it as meaning. I believe that's what how the commentary understands it. Even if the Buddha had said focus on your nostrils, or he, in this case, ida bhikkhave bhikkhu, here O monks, a monk does this, doesn't mean that that's the only way, or there's something special about the nose, or there's something special about the mouth. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with focusing on the abdomen. I've had people say to me, oh yes, focusing on the abdomen is not the Buddha's teaching. Such a ridiculous comment, and over. In fact, the majority of Sri Lankan people have been brainwashed into thinking this by monks who have come to agree that yes, the Buddha didn't teach focusing on the abdomen. Focusing on the abdomen is not the Buddha's teaching. It is in fact a part of the Buddha's teaching quite explicitly. The Buddha does talk about the abdomen as a meditation object. The rising and falling of the abdomen is mentioned in the Tipitaka. But regardless, this shows incredible. If someone, this is not what you're saying, but for those people who say that this, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, and it doesn't change my opinion of these people. They're great. Many of them are great people. But it shows great ignorance, willful ignorance of the Buddha's teaching. Because what is the abdomen? It's Kaya Nupassana, or it's the Rupa Khanda, it's the Dukkha Satcha, it's many parts. It's very much a core of the Buddha's teaching. How could you say the rising and falling of the abdomen is not the Buddha's teaching, and watching it is not the Buddha's teaching? This monk was trying to explain this to me, and I said, look, have you never heard of the contemplation of the four elements? And he said, what do you mean the four? I said, Vayo Dhatu, you don't know? And he said, oh, well, if you focus on it as Vayo Dhatu, then yes, it's a part of the Buddhist teaching. I said, well, what else would it be? It's Vayo Dhatu. It's sorry, I'm using Pali words. It's the air element. In this case, the pressure element. That part of the physical that is the experience of the pressure. You feel the pressure in the stomach. So this is, I think, not exactly what you're asking, but it's important to understand. The actual reason, as I understand it, why Mahasi Sayadaw and not even Mahasi Sayadaw, but why his teacher and the teachers that were advocating this at the time that Mahasi Sayadaw went to practice meditation, is actually a really trivial point, but important in a country like Burma. I'm not saying this is the only reason to focus on the stomach, because I'll actually point out where the Buddha talked about focusing on the stomach. But the point is a bit trivial, but it's important, as I said, in a place like Burma. The point is, Anapanasati in the Visuddhimagga is called samatha meditation. Anapanasati is not considered a part of vipassana meditation. So, if one wants to begin by practicing Anapanasati, one then has to transfer over to mindfulness of the four dhatus, according to the Visuddhimagga, which makes perfect sense. It may not be, well, some people totally disagree with it, but it's perfectly plausible explanation that focusing on the breath, anapanasati, the in-breaths and the out-breaths, anna and panna, or however it's translated, the mindfulness of the in and out breathing, is actually mindfulness of a concept, because nothing's going in. Your experience of the reality is not of anything going in and coming out. Your experience is the sensation at the nose, the sensation on your lip, the sensation in your chest, the sensation at your stomach. That's the ultimate reality. If you're just focusing on the breath, you're focusing on a concept. And so really Anapanasati is focusing on the in-breaths and out-breaths, and that's conceptual. When you say in one, in two, out two, or even just counting 1, 1, 2, 2, or 1, 2, and so on, you're focusing on something that doesn't exist. You're focusing on an aspect of the experience that is conceptual. Nothing's going in or out, not in your experience anyway. Your experience, as I said, is of the sensations. So it's called samatha meditation, and that seems quite reasonable to me. That being so, and considering that in the Visuddhimagga, I believe it talks about focusing on the nostrils as being anapanasati, or one example of anapanasati. There are actually other examples. They didn't want to use that as the object of vipassana meditation, even though clearly the sensations here can be the subject of or the object of vipassana meditation. They thought, and this is what Mahasi actually says. He says, if I teach this, people will think I'm teaching samatha meditation. So the monks in Burma would say, well, yeah, Anapanasati, he's teaching samatha. So it was actually contrary to the argument that people pose nowadays. So the Mahasi Sayadaw focused on the stomach, and people say it's not the Buddha's teaching, they say it's samatha, they say many, many different things. But the reason for focusing on the stomach is because that clearly is the vayodhatu, the air element, the experience of something becoming stiff and then becoming flaccid. It's an ultimate reality. It's impermanent, it's unsatisfying, or unsatisfiable, or suffering, or however you want to translate it, and it's uncontrollable. You will see these three things as you focus on it perfectly clearly. And this is why people don't like it. See, the truth of why people don't want to focus on the abdomen is because it's not fun. Anapanasati clearly can be samatha. Anyone who says it's vipassana only is totally wrong. Because when you focus on the nostril, when you focus on the breath going in and out, it's wonderful. You feel peaceful, you feel happy, and I have a break. No? It's samatha meditation. Good, great, happiness. But it's not vipassana. Not as most people practice it. When you focus on the abdomen, you don't get that. It's not comfortable. For most people, it's quite unpleasant. You feel, stressful, you find yourself forcing, the breath, you're trying to make it smooth, you're trying to make it constant, it's not constant, sometimes it disappears. Oh, how frustrating. But this is reality, and this is showing us our inability to accept reality, which is totally the purpose of vipassana. So anyone who can overcome these views, and so many Buddhists have these views and have been given these views by their teachers and so on, you can overcome it and actually just practice it and try it. You'll be amazed. And this is why it's so great teaching people who have no clue about Buddhism, because they say, okay, I'll try, and they go, wow, this works. And then they learn about all the different techniques and they say, well, that's fine, I've got mine and it works. But that's really the reason, and it's a trivial. I think what I mean is that the exact reason is pretty trivial. I mean, we don't have that problem. We don't have a bunch of monks saying, "Oh, don't focus on the nose. That's samatha." You won't get that. But the point is clear, that if you focus on the nose, no, not necessarily. If you practice anapanasati, you will generally tend to follow the breath. And not only follow the breath, you'll tend to fall into states of calm and tranquility. You'll be focused on this experience of the breath, and you'll fall into calm and tranquility. If you can go beyond that and come to see the impermanence and so on, and eventually focus on the reality of the experience, which is the sensation at the nostrils of the heat and the cold and so on, then it certainly can be vipassana. But when you focus on one point, whether it be the nostril or it be the stomach, and you're clear about watching the experience, and you're no longer focusing on the breath, then vipassana becomes quite clear. So I think my favorite answer to this question, that's really, I think, should answer the question, but my favorite answer is to say that, well, focusing on the abdomen is anapanasati. What is it if it's not mindfulness of breathing? But the point is, it's only one kind of mindfulness of breathing. It's the kind which is focusing on the ultimate reality of breathing, which is the 5 aggregates. When you watch the stomach, there are the 5 aggregates. There is the rupa aggregate, which is vayo dhatu. There may even be the fire aggregate, if you feel heat or cold. This is rupa dhatu, rupa khanda. Vedana khanda, you'll feel unpleasant sometimes, pleasant sometimes. You'll feel a neutral sensation sometimes. Sanya khanda, you will be aware this is rising, this is falling. You'll recognize it for what it is. Sankhara khanda, sometimes you're judging it, knowing this is long, this is short, this is good, this is bad, liking it and disliking it. And Vijnana khanda is the mind which goes to know the rising. You'll see the 5 aggregates. Once you look at them, you'll see the 5 aggregates as being impermanent, unsatisfying, and uncontrollable, which is totally clear from the very outset. Anyone who has any doubt about the rising and falling has to be asked this question: are you not seeing impermanent suffering and non-self? Because it's impossible that you should look at the abdomen for even a short time and not see these 3 things. And therefore it's perfectly incredible, it's undeniable that by doing this you're going to see the truth of life. That's our reason for watching the abdomen. It's an incredibly useful object for seeing things clearly, even though it may not lead to states of peace and calm. So for those people who want the states of peace and calm, by all means, it's a wonderful thing. If you have the time, do it. Take the time to develop calm as well. You might even get magical powers, be able to read people's minds, remember past lives, and so on. Great. But in the end, you have to switch on the insight lens and focus on the feeling at the nose, or the feeling at the stomach, or so on. Okay? So I hope that gives a fairly comprehensive answer to this popular question, one that's asked quite often by a diverse range of people.